Welcome back to Let's Automate It with Robin, automation and AI for non-techies. And today we're getting back to basics. We're looking at n8n and what is this software? How does it work? How do we navigate around it? This is for you if you're getting started with AI and automation. And in particular, you're trying to evaluate different tools. And today we're going to look at n8n, our favorite automation tool. We're not going to be building workflows today. This is not a how-to. This is a tour and introduction to this software of n8n. Although in order to do that, we will be having a look at a couple of workflows. In fact, we're going to be working with a workflow we have done a video on before. It's our part 1, part 2, part 3 course on how to get started with n8n. Check out those videos on our channel. But this is what we're looking at today. You're looking at n8n. This is the screen. This is what's going on. And I'm actually using the n8n canvas as a guide to guide us through this video. So let's start by understanding, what does n8n do? What is it all about? Well, n8n really is a tool that connects different data sets together. Now, those data sets may be hiding in another piece of software. For example, maybe your CRM package or an emailing tool, or a spreadsheet sitting on Google Drive or in ShareSpace or anything like that. And it connects these data sources together. And in the middle of between one data source and the other, it's transferring information backwards and forwards, and it can do things with those information. This is what we call automation. There's a trigger that gets the job done. There's a trigger, I should say, that starts the workflow. And then we do work with that and we end up with an output. Let me explain more about what that is. But by having a look at n8n's website. So we're going to jump in here. And what is n8n all about? It's secure AI native workflow automation tool, what's sometimes called RPA as well, robotic process automation. And it's about automating tasks that would normally be done by a human. If a human can do it and it's digital, why not have a tool do it where we can pass information around? So that's what n8n is about. Now, we've got different ways to use n8n. You can use let me click into pricing here. We can use a cloud hosted by n8n. You can have them run your n8n for you. And these are the pricings here. Lots of benefits to that. There are a lot of limitations as well, but it's very powerful. You've got all the features, but you are limited to how many workflows. That means how many automations and how many steps, depending what level you're at, how many different steps in the workflow you can go with. What I do recommend though is the community edition. That's what I'm using. And we have a video in the channel on exactly how to set up and host your own version of n8n. It is not difficult. Anybody can do it. The video will walk you through it step by step. And then for $5 or $6 a month, you have unlimited automation power. So definitely recommend checking that out. Those are the options there. If we come have a look at the product, we can create workflows. Here is a little bit of an animation of a canvas. You just saw my canvas where I had those purple blocks on the screen. We didn't have any workflows on that canvas yet. But here's a workflow. We've got a trigger here on the left where something is coming in and triggering this workflow. And then data is being passed from left to right. And essentially each one of these nodes is doing a different job. It's either looking at the data and making decisions, or it's passing information. Here you can see we're passing information to and from Slack. We're doing some code. We're getting Jira involved here on this example. But this is an automation at work here in this animation that we're seeing here. And there's a whole host of things that we can do here. There are trigger nodes here that can start a trigger. We have AI nodes that can do all kinds of things. So I'm not going to go further than that, but it is a very, very powerful tool. It is amazing. It's similar to make.com, depending on your viewpoint. It may be better or worse. Personally, I prefer it. And you've also heard of Zapier, maybe Pabbly. These are all automation tools. n8n is one of those, and probably the only one, one of the very few, I should say. There are new ones coming all the time that you can self-host, and they're not open source. They're fair usage license, but very, very powerful. So that is the concept of n8n and how you roughly get set up. Either go through the enterprise model, just let them do it for you. Very, very simple. Spend some money, or set it up yourself. Also simple. Save yourself some money as well. I want to dive into here in terms of understanding what goes into an automation. What are the stages, the phases of an automation? So I've got here the 4 phases of n8n workflows. And what I'm talking about here is, and this isn't unique to n8n, I think almost any workflow fits into this very broad structure. We have something called triggers. Triggers is that stimulus to make a workflow happen. It's what starts the workflow. Then that'll bring information into n8n. Maybe someone sends a trigger, maybe sends a Telegram message, maybe a WhatsApp message, maybe something changes in your CRM. Maybe there's a change in a Google Drive. There could be a host of triggers. Maybe it's just manually triggered by clicking a button on a website. But there's a trigger, and that trigger will send information here into n8n. It will arrive here, and n8n will hold onto that data. Then the next chunk of steps is usually processing the data. What do we do with that data? We need to transform it. We need to reformat it. We need to check on something, and we need to run some if statements. Is it this type of data or is it that type of data? It's what we call data processing, data transformation, data flow. We're kind of deciding what to do with that data. And often in that process, we're going to access third-party tools. For example, you may update your CRM with information that's coming from the trigger, or perhaps information's coming from the trigger and you want to enrich it with information from your CRM. So you'll fetch information from your CRM, or a Google Drive or an AI tool. These are third-party tools which n8n lets you send requests to and get information back from, or even update a third-party database or third-party tools via APIs or native connections, which comprises nodes, which we'll talk about in a moment. But these two are interchangeable, but they are definitely the engine where the hard work gets done of automating tasks. The final phase here I call the outputs phase. And that is the result of the workflow. This workflow was created for a reason, whatever that reason, and that's the output. The output might be notifying someone, updating an email, updating a CRM, sending a message back, notifying a person, updating a website, whatever the case may be, there's an output. So we have an input, which we've called a trigger. We have these middle sections where we're processing data, enriching data, updating tools in the middle. And then we have an output where we actually do something with the result. And for my mind, all workflows for greater or lesser extent fit into this very broad and possibly oversimplistic model. But I think it's a nice way to think about it. So with that in mind, let's actually have a little tour of the interface here of n8n. And that's where we are in right now. I've switched my n8n into dark mode. You may be seeing a white canvas. I'm seeing a dark canvas. It's just under settings. And why don't we start there under settings? So here I'm logged in as myself here, and we've got these three little dots, and we have settings in here. And this is for looking at the broader settings for n8n. So here you can see my usage plan. I've got this menu down the left-hand side. I'm on the community edition. I can have unlimited workflows, my information. I can add users to my accounts. And there's an API key if I wanted to push and pull information from n8n. These external secrets, environments, SSO, LDP, and log streaming are all unique to the enterprise model, the model that is hosted with n8n. We, as self-hosted, don't have access to this, but we do have access to community nodes, which the hosted version with n8n does not have access to, and these are quite useful. So community nodes are nodes that are built, but what are nodes? They're little jobs, they're little blocks, little building blocks we can use inside of n8n to do jobs. And n8n has a host of nodes pre-built, but sometimes you need something that n8n doesn't have, but someone in the community may have built a node that does the job that you're after. You can go browse that community, find a node that does the job, and install it here. So let's have a quick look at doing that. I'm going to click the install button, which just opens up this ability to browse. And I can go browse a third-party repository here, and these are all different nodes. So I might find one here that I like. Let's have a look here. Here's a YouTube transcription node. Okay, so I can just go and grab hold of that title, copy it, come out of here, and pop this in here, and click that I understand it, hit the install button, and this will install this node inside of my n8n. If I refresh my n8n, I'll have this new node in here. You won't get this feature if you are using the cloud-hosted version with n8n. This is limited only to the self-hosted version. So it can be very powerful, but of course it can be buggy as well because these nodes are being built by the community and not going through the stringent code checks that n8n itself would go through. But that's a lovely feature to know, and that's where you can come and grab and have enhanced functionality with your n8n. And then finally on the screen, we can see what version we're on. This is the very, very latest version. I've just updated my n8n to the very latest version. So that was looking at the settings over here. Let's have a look at templates quickly. This is super useful. The n8n community is very, very active. And here they've shared, the people like me, like you, are sharing workflow templates. We have 1,251 templates available. And you can search through these different criteria, marketing, engineering, and find a workflow. Click into the workflow. And here you can see it. And you can zoom in here and you can read, see how this works, see if it does the job that you want to. And then simply you can highlight all of this like I'm doing here. Control C, copy it. Control V, paste it directly into your workflow, into your canvas. And that entire workflow will appear on your canvas. Very simple. You don't have to install anything. Just Control C, Control V, cut it, copy it, paste it. Works really, really well. Okay. Then what else have we got on this canvas here? I'm going to click onto here and we're going to go into workflow overview. This is the screen you will arrive on after you have logged in. And here is a list of all my workflows. If you're running your very first n8n, you may have no workflows showing here. But we have a list of workflows here and list on and on and on. You can see some are active, some are inactive. We can filter these workflows by looking for tags. We can apply tags to a workflow, and I can look for all the let's automated tags, for example, and that's just going to give me all the workflows with that tag. We have another section here for credentials. What are credentials? Well, you need to connect often with third-party tools. For example, I'm connecting with one of my Google Drive accounts here, but I can't just connect with it. I have to log in. I have to give passwords. I have to get API keys. I have to get permission. Each third-party tool is a different way of doing that. But once you have that permission, basically you have the key to the lock to access that third-party tool. Those keys are saved here. We call them credentials. And here's a list of credentials I've created. And you can create new credentials as well by clicking on this button over here where we can create a new workflow, create a new credential. You can also do it here, create a new workflow, create a credential. I'll click into this one. And we can say, I want to connect to, let's find something that's familiar. Calendly, for example. I want to connect to Calendly. And so I can work that. And then here's the Calendly credential. I can see it just needs an access token. And if I click Open Docs here, n8n in almost every case has created great documentation where you can follow through the steps of how to get access, how to get what you need in order to access Calendly from here. And then once you've done that, you might want to relabel this credential and call it something like, let's call it, let's automate it for Calendly. It won't let me save this now because I haven't actually put an access token in here, but this is how you can create your access tokens. It's different for every single third-party tool you're accessing. They all have their own security protocols, but this is what credentials is about. We'll come back to executions, but executions are a history of all the workflows that have run. And I'm going to show you that in a different place. But here we can see a history of workflows that have been running across my entire n8n installation. So that is the overview of the kind of navigational section of our n8n. So this n8n basics workflow is what I've just hijacked, and I'm using it here to navigate and keep us kind of structured in this video. And here's the canvas. And I'm using my mouse to scroll around on the canvas. You can also use your space bar and then use your mouse to scroll around. Very, very useful. And what you're actually seeing on the screen here is not a workflow. These are not nodes. I hover over here. I've got this little sticky note. And these are just sticky notes that I've added to the canvas here just for the purpose of this video. So we can kind of manage our structure. You can see where we are in the video and you can change their color and bold and so forth. They support markdown text formatting. So you can do all of that. Very, very useful. So that's what we are seeing on the screen here. And I'm going to show you a nice little way to use that in a moment. So there we have it. We've navigated the n8n basic navigation. But now we're in the canvas. These little white dots is the canvas of n8n. and we want to have a little look-see around there. So let's do a canvas tour. Okay. So without looking at without too much of the logic and how we do things, more just where are things, that's what this video is about. We want to get nodes. Nodes are the little worker bees, the building blocks of these things. And you can get the nodes by hitting this little plus icon top right. And it opens a tray where you can go and grab the nodes that you need. Now, every workflow has to start with a trigger node, and then we can have other nodes in there. And there are all kinds of trigger nodes. But we've got nodes that do data transformation, that manage the flow of data. We've got core nodes. But let's have a look at this action and app. This is also the list of third-party nodes. This what's represented by this colored block here. So if we click into this, we have lots and lots of nodes. So there's an Airtable node. That's a common one. Airtable is a database system. It's kind of like a very fancy spreadsheet, and you can create an account with them. It's a third-party tool. I'm going to click into that. And these are all nodes. These are action nodes that would do something as a result of a trigger. So here's a trigger here, which is a new Airtable event. Something changes in Airtable, it's going to trigger, and then we can take actions based on this. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to click this. I'm just going to click, and it's going to appear on my canvas. There it is. It's overwritten everything, and I can just grab it and drag it around. And this is a trigger now, would fit here. And this is what would trigger the workflow. I'm going to delete this. We'll come back and look at things like this in detail in a short moment. And then we've also got action nodes. Let's use Airtable again. And now we have action nodes. So for example, let's create a record or update a record. We get a trigger and we need to record the results of that. So I can go and it's opened up the configuration screen, but there's the node. And if I click into it, double click on it, this is my configuration screen. We'll come back to that in a moment, but this is how we can get nodes onto our canvas. Now I've got some dummy nodes over here we're going to have a look at. And just to highlight, these nodes are connected. So you can disconnect a node by hovering over it and hitting the little rubbish bin icon, little bin icon, and those are now deleted connections. If I wanted to connect something, I just drag it to there. If I don't want to connect to this node, I want to connect to that node, I can drag it to that node and so on. So I get to be able to control my data flow with these. Now, I can also add a new node here by clicking this little plus button or by using this plus button here and dragging a node onto the screen and then connecting it up. We'll have a look at this little workflow in a moment to illustrate what I'm talking about. But there's an example of a workflow. We're using these dummy nodes as we have a trigger into a processing node, into a third-party access node, into an action result and output. So this is how we get nodes onto the screen and how we move them around. Now, we've also spoke a little bit about importing workflows. Now, there's something very, very cool about n8n. And let's go jump down to templates here. We've already had a look at this, but now this will make more sense. Let's get a simple little workflow somewhere here. I'm just clicked into the sales. I'm just looking for a simple workflow. Here we go. Scrape business emails from Google Maps without use of any third-party APIs. That sounds pretty good to me. I'm going to click into it. Okay, fairly complicated workflow on the screen here. I'm just going to click to explore it. But what I can do here, now I'm not going to copy the whole thing because it's quite large. So I'm just going to grab this little section of it. All right, so I'll grab that little section to demonstrate my principle. And now that's copied. Make sure I've got a good copy there. Okay, Control C. So I've copied it. It says copy to clipboard. Let's come back over here. I'm going to save some changes here. And just to keep it simple, I'm going to go and create a brand new canvas. So here's the new workflow. Okay, click into this, and now I'm using my shortcut key, Control V, and look at that. It's just pasted in the workflow directly from my template. And we can now do this for individual nodes. I can cut and copy this node and go and paste it into another workflow, or put it in an email and send it to someone who can then use that node on their workflow. It's very, very simple to be able to cut and paste and move nodes around like that, including the little sticky notes that you can see here. Very, very useful. While I've got you here, let's have a look at this. You could rename this workflow anything you wanted to. So we could go, let's just call this intro, and I could add a tag. And we know why we need to add tags, so that we can have a bit easier filtering mechanism to look through our long list of workflows once you get many of them. So I'm just going to delete this out now. This was just for demo purposes. and I'm not going to save this. I'm going to go back to my overview, leave without saving, and I'm going to click back into let's actually save that workflow because I gave it a name. So I'm going to delete that workflow. Yes, delete it. And very straightforward, very, very intuitive software. Okay, we're back to n8n basics where we were before. And I was just demonstrating you how we can import workflows using that cut and paste methodology that I have mentioned to you. There are other ways though. We can use these three dots here in the corner, and we can import from URL, we can import from file. And if you had a saved workflow, you can save a workflow. It's basically a JSON file, but you can download your workflow and go and save it in a Google Drive, and then you can go and import that file from your Google Drive, and it'll open up in your n8n on your canvas, ready to go. In fact, in our Let's Automate It community, which I highly recommend you join if you are interested in this topic of learning about AI and automation in n8n, or we have a host of workflows that we are building and adding to all the time. We have the JSON there, and you can go grab those files and import them here and have these workflows ready to go. You don't need to build them. So that's what's going on here. We can obviously duplicate it as well and create a clone of a workflow. But under settings, even I think a lot of the relatively sophisticated n8n users I come across are not aware of these workflow settings. So let's quickly take a look at those. Okay. We have execution order. Leave that on recommended. That basically means it's going to execute from left to right in the order of the way the nodes are connected to one another. So you'll have your trigger on the left-hand side, I should say, and then it'll move across to the other side. Now, this is interesting. A lot of n8n people don't know this. You can have an error workflow. So in other words, if there's an error in your workflow, if something breaks, if you haven't connected up something to let you know, you won't know that it is broken, and you'll be, relying on a service that's not working and not know about it. So you can actually connect up. You can go and create a workflow. We've created one here called workflow failure notification, and you can come and choose one. Here's all my other workflows. These are all my workflows, my whole library. But that's the one I want. And what this does is it sends me an email and with the name of the workflow and says there's been a problem, so I can go and check it out. So that's very useful. So you want to turn that on. You can set your time zone here, so you don't need to be messing with the server settings. You can go and check your time zone, which is quite useful as well. Now you can save your executions as well. You can have a history of your workflows. How are they working? How are they doing? And that's super useful. But if you're saving all your workflows and you've got hundreds or thousands of executions running, if you've got something running every minute, for example, it's going to clog up your server very quickly. So sometimes you may want to save successful production executions in the beginning just to make sure it's stable. And once it's stable, you might want to turn that off to save space. And you also may want to save failed production executions, because when you're building, you may want to see your failures so that you can see what went wrong in order to come back and fix it. But leaving these on all the time, and they are on by default, can mean that your n8n VPS gets quite full. I'm not sure on the hosted version. There might be a size limit as well that you'll run into. Okay. And then finally here we have timeout workflow. It is possible a workflow gets stuck. Maybe there's an infinite loop that you've built into it without realizing it, and it's going to run forever and burn up resources. So you can put a timeout that if once a workflow has been running for a set period of time, it just stops. And that might be a great way to save your resources. So a lot you can do here under the settings for a workflow that will then apply, for a canvas at least, that will apply to the workflows or the workflow on the canvas. So that's all we've got going on here. At the bottom here, we have the ability to zoom to fit to everything that's on the canvas. There we go. This is everything I've got on the canvas. Then we have the zoom in button. And then you can drag, you can hold your space bar down, and you can be able to manipulate your canvas bar with the mouse. Zoom out. You can also reset your zoom. And then this is a new feature. You can report a bug. This will open up GitHub, and you can report a bug if you see it. So pretty straightforward navigation of the canvas, the settings, and such like. I hope that made sense for you. All right, so let's see where we are. We've had a look at workflow settings. We've looked at importing workflows. We've spoken about error handling, and that was that workflow under the settings in case something goes wrong. We've looked at naming a workflow and adding a tag. And we have not yet looked at executions. So we are in the editor mode at the moment. This is the editing mode. You can see here I've got a workflow and I can edit and work on this workflow. So I'm in the editor mode. But we also have the executions mode. And this is the history of what has gone before. Now, I have run this a couple of times. In fact, I've recorded this whole video once already and it crashed. So I'm having to do it a second time. So as a result, I've got some executions in here. So if I click into executions, we can actually see what happened. Date and time of something running. It's busy loading up the execution and it's in this bottom little workflow, which we'll get to in a moment. We can see that it ran. Let me zoom in so you can see that. Can't edit anything here, but I can click into each one of these and see what happened. So that's great. I can see here there was an error. It says error. So I can come in here and I can go, well, what went wrong? And I can see, here's an error. It's got a little, let me zoom in on that. Something went wrong. So it's nice to be able to see your history, but be warned, this can fill up your hard drive quite quickly, your server, I should say. So you only want to have this on for a short period of time. And once it's stable, leave that off. But that is your editor versus your editor versus your education. My apologies. Editor versus your executions setting here within n8n. I hope you're hanging on. I hope this is making sense, going through it relatively quickly, but most of this I think is common sense and you can figure out for yourself. But a little tour, it doesn't work. It doesn't help, I should say. So what happens when you're talking, when you start reading ahead of yourself, you start swapping words out. So now we want to talk about working with nodes. Now I've already shown you where the node tray is. I'm getting some nodes out. But let's go look at working with some nodes and some of the basic configuration of the nodes. And I'm going to come down here to a workflow we've already got. Now, I've kind of set this workflow up so that it lines up with these 4 phases here. We have a trigger node. This is a Telegram node that's going to be triggered by an incoming Telegram message. We have a processing node. That's this if node here, which is checking to if the message that came in from Telegram, does it meet certain criteria? That's the processing node. And then I have other processing nodes which are later in the workflow, but I have lined them up underneath here. And then we have a third-party tool node. This is reaching out to a service that gets us the weather information. And we're connecting with them and getting the weather information. And then the output node is sending the weather information back to Telegram in this case. So these are the 4 stages that we're going through. So I have got some data already in here. Can you see this little pin icon? I've already got some data in here, so I don't need to go and trigger this. But actually what I'm going to do for you to illustrate this point is I'm going to double click on this now and open up this node. This is a trigger node, so it has nothing on the left-hand side here. Nothing's coming in, but this is the information that would come in from Telegram. I brought this information in earlier and I've pinned it so it stays here permanently, but I'm going to unpin it and start again with this. So let's just go here and I'm going to go unpin. So this is not doing this. So let's go and trigger this right now. So this is live. This is active. This little button here is the difference between an inactive and an active workflow. So this is live. So I'm going to go and open my Telegram. And I've got in this little Telegram here. And I know that if I type this exact phrase into this particular flow, it's going to almost instantly give me a weather report. And that's what this workflow does. So if you want to learn the basics of n8n, today is just a tour of n8n. If you want to learn the basics of starting with automation, please go check out our YouTube channel. On the course, we've got a 3-part course, part 1, part 2, part 3 on how to build this exact workflow. And through that active building, you will get to understand, you'll build this exact flow you're seeing on the screen now. You'll understand the intricacies of n8n. This is not the purpose of today's video. If you want to know more about the detail of this, go check out that course and get the basics there. But I'm going to go into an execution. Why? Because I just ran it. You saw it ran, we got there. So there's the execution data. Clicking into it. Let me zoom in. And here we can see our information came in and it went all the way through the workflow. We can see one item moving all the way through the workflow. But we want to look at this in some detail. So I'm going to open this up. And this is the data that comes in from Telegram. There's the message that I sent. And this is the date and a whole bunch of other information that we may or may not need. The little trick I've got here is if you click onto JSON, we can have different ways of viewing this data. You can see it in a table format. You can see it in a JSON format, or you can see it in a schema format. But if you go to JSON and you hover in this corner, little copy icon will pop up. And it's going to copy this data set. So this is a nice little trick that I do often. Then I'll come back to my editor. I'll click into my trigger node and then click this pencil icon, delete out the generic data that's there, and now paste in that little data set. So now I have real life data that I can work without having to kind of manually put the trigger each time. And that's really useful. For example, let's pretend your trigger was an email coming into your email box. You'd have to wait for an email to come in each time or keep sending yourself an email to test it. But if you did it once, you could go and grab the data from that execution, put it in here, and essentially pin it. If I hit save now, you'll see this is pinned. This little icon's back. And now I have data that I can work with. And this is particularly useful if you're calling third-party tools, especially if there's a cost involved. You don't want to keep calling it. You just want to have to call it once, get data, and then pin that data just for the sake of building out your workflow. So I hope you grasp that concept. But what I want to show you here now is this if node. And this is the basic layout of all nodes of n8n. On the left-hand side here, you have the incoming data. And then this middle section is how we configure what we just tell the node we want it to do with the data. And then on this outside will be the output. And there it is, input and output. So it's a nice, easy way to understand what's going on here. Let me talk about what this node is. By the way, you can change the name of a node by clicking in here and actually typing in and calling it anything you want. But what we're doing here is we're actually checking to see if the message that came in, see this message here is send weather, does that message equal send weather? All right, and let me show you what I mean. This is called a merge token or a dynamic field or an expression, depending what you're after. But I'm going to delete that out, okay? And I'm just going to drag this in now. Click and drag. Don't need to be a techie to do this. And it's going to pull in whatever information is referenced by this expression. And we can see here the information is send weather. Is that equal to this in this particular example? The answer is yes. Let's test that up. It's going to be true or false. True, yes, it is equal, or false, it's not equal to it. So this is one of the data transformation nodes that we have. I can just quickly change this to lowercase, run this again. And now it's gone down the false branch because the actual phrase has an uppercase S, and I was just looking for a lowercase s. And this would now go down the false branch. So that's just a very simple way of understanding how these nodes work, and you can configure them. They're all very, very simple, and they're all a little bit unique. And they all come with good documentation that you can access by clicking on here to understand how they work. But this is what we call a processing or data transformation node. So that's how we can work. Now, the information here, you can see we've got two possible outputs, true or false. Now, the last time we tested went down the false one. So we could connect this node to any other node to take an action based on if it's the false criteria. In this particular example, we want the true criteria. So let's run this again because I did update it. There we go. It's gone down the true branch now. And now I can call this Open Weather Map API, but you can see this node has the same configuration. I have an input and an output. Okay. Here I have a credential to connect with. Different to this node because this is not reaching out to a third-party tool. It's a process flow. So I don't need any permissions. It's a native data processing node, but this one is a third-party application node. So I'm clicking onto this. I need permission to reach out to Open Weather Map. That's what the third-party service is called, and we connect that with a credential. Here's the credential. There's the access token. Here are the docs that will help you how to do that and go and get the information that you need. So slightly different, but you can see very, very similar. We've got some configuration steps here, and again, we've got docs that will walk you through how to do that. And if I click test step now, it's going to go and get the weather in metric format based on city name, and the city name is Cape Town, because this is how I've programmed this node to run. And again, if you want more details so you can build this for yourself, for your own city, go and check out our course on our YouTube channel. But here it is. We've got input data, asked it to do a job, and now we've got the output data. There is the weather forecast in a fairly crazy format. We've got latitude and longitude, and we've got sunrise and sunset in a really odd format of it's not human readable. But that is what these next steps are going to do. We've passed it here through to this node. This is a code node that will manipulate the data. Another code node. Not going to dive into those. It's outside of the scope of this video, but it is inside the scope of our little course video. And I pass that data all the way through, right through here to a set node, which basically captures the results of those previous nodes. And now I can see the input time I've got my sunrise time, I've got my sunset time, my wind direction, my wind and temperatures, and all the good things a weather report should have. And I've gone and dragged them into this little interface here, so I can record wind speed. It'll be the label, and there's the value, the label and the value, and so on. And if I test the step here, which I've done, there's my output. There's the output. This I've just kind of formatted that data. And now we're pushing this data all the way back through to Telegram. It's pushing it back to Telegram, and we're doing some configuration here. Here's the input, and I've written a little message here. Here's your weather forecast for today. And I've gone and dragged in the item that I want. So the date and the time, the weather highlights, weather description, for example. Let's see what else we've got here. We got min temperatures. So where's the temperatures here? Min temperature. So I've dragged that into my little description. And if I hit this test step now, what's this doing? This is the output phase. The output phase is sending the information that I wanted back to Telegram. So a great example of trigger, processing in the middle using a third-party tool and some data transformation nodes, and pushing it back to where it's useful to us. And in this case, that is a Telegram node. Now you understand basically how nodes can fit together, how we can configure them, and how data flows through them. So congratulations, you're getting your head around how n8n works. We've looked at node settings, we've looked at naming, and we've looked at the JSON that is a node, because effectively these nodes are just groups of JSON. You can actually go and copy this and go and paste this into a text editor or your Word document, and you'll see lines and lines of code which represents this node. And essentially, you'll be able to copy that code and paste it back into your canvas, and it'll kind of create this node again. So that's quite useful in how you can pass the nodes around and how we can cut and paste from templates, as we've already spoken about. So I hope this will help you to understand how n8n works, the basic fundamental and the very simple way to think about how you can build flows and their basic building blocks, the tools you've got at your fingertips in order to be able to create workflows, as well as how to set some settings and navigate around in here. Spend some time in n8n, super powerful tool. We can do incredible things with it. Check out our community. All the details are in the description of this video down below, and we will walk you through how to get started, how to get clients if you're building an AI and automation, how to install this in your business if you're a business owner who's looking to use automation to improve your efficiency, your profitability, and just your general business performance. Come and join us in the Let's Automate community. We'd love to have you there. I hope this makes sense. I hope this has been useful. Very, very simple basics. But once you've got this kind of locked in, your world opens up and you can really start getting creative with this. We'll catch you on the next video. Have a great day, great evening, wherever you are in the world. Cheers.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.